A brilliant black girl scores the highest in her class mathematics test, but her racist teacher refuses to believe it. He is certain she cheated, adding that she couldn't possibly have beaten her white classmates. Suddenly, a shocking truth is revealed. Now what happens next will leave you speechless. Before we dive into today's incredible story of courage and justice, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us tell the stories that need to be told. The classroom was dead silent. 17-year-old Zara Thompson sat at her desk, staring down at her graded test paper. A bright, bold red 100% was marked at the top. She should have been smiling. She should have been proud of her hard work. But instead, she felt the heavy, suffocating weight of every single stare in the room. Mr. Leonard Grayson, the math teacher, a man whose reputation for a quiet and very real prejudice preceded him, stood at the front of the room, his own face twisted in a mask of a pure, unadulterated disbelief. He tapped his marker, a sharp, repetitive, and very annoying sound against the whiteboard, shaking his head as if he were trying to wake himself up from a bad dream. "This," he said, and he pointed a long, bony finger directly at Zara's paper, his voice a tight and very ugly sound, "is impossible." A few of the students, the ones who always seemed to orbit around him, snickered. Others just watched in a quiet and very uncomfortable confusion. Zara clenched her jaw. Grayson folded his arms. "No one in this class," he said, "has ever scored a perfect 100% on my advanced calculus test. And then you," he paused, his gaze sweeping over her as if she were something unpleasant he had just found on the bottom of his shoe. "You suddenly managed to do it with such a huge margin over the others?" The room tensed. Zara felt her stomach drop. She knew exactly what he was implying. She had always been one of the smartest and most hard-working students in the entire school. But Mr. Grayson had never, not once, acknowledged her intelligence. He would praise students like Logan Barrett and Macy Whitfield, the white kids from the wealthy families, while barely even looking at Zara when she raised her hand. She sat up a little straighter. I studied hard for this test, Mr. Grayson," she said. "I don't believe it," Grayson cut in, his voice sharper now, colder. "No, there is no way you got this score fairly." A gasp, a collective and very audible gasp, rippled through the class. Zara's heart pounded in her chest. Grayson didn't even blink. Laughter erupted from Logan's side of the room. Macy covered her mouth, but her smirk was clear. Zara's fingers curled into tight, white-knuckled fists. "Grayson," Jess grabbed her test paper from her desk, waving it in the air like a trophy. "Show me your notes." Zara swallowed hard. "I did most of the work in my head," Grayson scoffed, a loud, ugly, and very public sound. "Right?" he said. "So you just magically solved a series of college-level calculus problems in your head?" "I don't think so." He turned to the class. "If she really understood this material," he announced, "then she should be able to rework these problems right here and right now." The murmurs spread across the room then. Some of the students looked at Zara with a new and very real pity. Others, like Logan, just smirked. Leaning back in their chairs to enjoy the show, Zara's breath came faster now. Her hands felt clammy. Grayson slammed a blank sheet of paper down on her desk. "Go on," he said. "Let's see you do it again." She stared down at the blank, white paper. She knew, with a certainty that was as clear and as bright as the 100% on her test, that she could solve the equations again. But that wasn't the point. The point was that no one else in that room was being treated like this. She lifted her chin. Grayson's eyes flashed. "They didn't score a perfect 100, he said. Zara's anger, a hot and very real and very righteous anger, burned in her chest. She could feel the sting of the humiliation crawling up her spine. The heavy silence that had fallen over the room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Grayson's jaw was tight, his face a deep, ugly red. A few of the students shifted, uncomfortably in their seats. The tension was thick, suffocating. Grayson's lips curled into a sneer. "I don't care what kind of nonsense you are spewing," he said. "I am reporting this to the principal." And until then, he had yanked the test paper from her desk and had crumpled it with a great theatrical show of a pure and very final contempt. In his fist, "Your grade is invalid." And just then, the classroom door had swung open. Principal Marcus Dean, a tall, serious-looking black man in his late 50s, had stepped inside. His sharp eyes scanned the room before settling on Grayson. "Mr. Grayson," he had said, his deep voice calm but very firm. "Can I have a word with you?" Grayson had stiffened, but the principal had just held up a hand. "Outside," he had said. "Now." Grayson had hesitated for a moment, but then he had followed. As soon as the door had closed behind them, the room had erupted into a series of hushed and very excited whispers. Logan had chuckled under his breath, but Zara had just ignored him, her own eyes now staring at the closed door. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Something felt off. Moments later, the door had swung open again. This time, Principal Dean had stepped inside, alone. His expression was completely unreadable as he had looked around the room. Finally, his gaze had settled on Zara. "Miss Thompson," he said, "could you please come with me?" Zara's throat went dry. She had grabbed her bag and had stood up, her own legs now shaking slightly as she had followed him out into the hallway. As soon as they had stepped out into the hallway, she had seen her. Ms. Perez, the school's kind, very compassionate guidance counselor, was standing beside a laptop that was on a rolling cart. The screen of the laptop was paused on a security camera feed. The principal had turned to her. "Do you know what this is?" he'd asked. Zara had nodded slowly. "It's the classroom CCTV footage," she had said. The principal had just nodded, and then, without another word, he had pressed play. And what Zara saw had made her own breath hitch in her throat. On the screen from earlier that morning, before the class had even started, was Mr. Grayson at his desk, flipping through the stack of the graded tests. When he had reached hers, he had stared at it for a long, long time. His lips had moved, as if he were mumbling to himself. And then, suddenly, he had clenched his jaw and had slammed the paper down on his desk. The footage had continued. Just a few minutes before the test was to be returned, Grayson had glanced around the empty classroom. He had pulled out his phone and he had typed something. And then he had picked up Zara's test again, and he had shaken his head and he had muttered under his breath, but the camera's microphone had picked it up perfectly, "There is no way in hell that she is that smart." Zara's fists clenched. The principal had exhaled a long, slow sound through his nose. "We have been reviewing the past footage, too," he said. "And it is not the first time he has done something like this." Zara's stomach turned, and Ms. Perez had looked at her. Gently, "We are taking this very, very seriously, Zara," she had said. "You are not in trouble, but Mr. Grayson is." At that moment, the classroom door burst open. Grayson stormed out, his face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. That footage doesn't mean anything." The principal turned to him. "It means everything." Grayson scoffed. "So what? You're going to believe this little girl over me?" The principal's face darkened. "No," he said. "I'm believing the evidence." He stepped forward. "Mr. Grayson, you are officially suspended, effective immediately." Grayson's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious. You will collect your belongings and leave the premises. Now." Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more. Powerful stories like this, Zara watched as security officers appeared at the end of the hallway. Grayson looked around as if waiting for someone to defend him. No one did. Finally, with a furious huff, he turned and stomped away. Zara let out a shaky breath. The principal turned to her with a small smile. "And you, Miss Thompson, have just earned yourself a full-ride scholarship." Her eyes widened. "Wait, what?" He nodded. "We reached out to a few academic organizations. They were very impressed with your resilience and your talent." Zara's heart pounded. This wasn't just justice. This was karma hitting hard. The news had spread through Lincoln High School like a wildfire. By the time the lunch bell had rung, everyone was talking about Mr. Grayson's downfall. Some of the students were stunned. Others whispered that they weren't surprised at all. But one thing was clear. Zara Thompson was no longer just another and very invisible student. She was a name that people would not and could not soon forget. Sitting at the cafeteria table, she scrolled through her phone. Her inbox now flooded with a wave of new and very welcome and very supportive messages. But not everyone was happy. Across the room, Logan Barrett and Macy Whitfield sat with their usual very exclusive group, whispering and casting a series of dark and very ugly looks in Zara's direction. Finally, Logan stood up. "This is a joke," he said, his voice not loud, but carrying enough of a weight to silence the people at his own table. Macy just smirked. "It's the biggest scam of the year," she said. Zara sighed, and she put her phone down. She was not in the mood for their nonsense. But Logan wasn't done. He turned toward her. "Yo, Zara," he called out, his own voice now dripping with a thick and very ugly sarcasm. "Tell us, how does it feel to play the victim and get rewarded for it?" Zara clenched her jaw. She heard a few new gasps from the students who were sitting nearby. Zara pushed her chair back and stood up. "The only person who got exposed here was Mr. Grayson," she said, her own voice now as cold and as sharp as steel. "I worked hard for that test, and I earned my grade. Just because you couldn't beat me, Logan, does not mean that I cheated." Logan's smirk twitched. "Please," he said. "We all know you just got lucky." Zara raised a single, elegant eyebrow. "Lucky?" she asked. She took a single, powerful step closer to him. "Tell me, Logan," she said, "where was my luck when Mr. Grayson ignored me every single time I raised my hand in his class? Where was my luck when I had to study twice as hard as you just to get noticed?" She narrowed her eyes then. "Are you just mad?" she finished, her own voice now a quiet and very deadly whisper, "that a black girl outsmarted you?" The entire cafeteria went dead silent. Logan's face burned a deep, ugly red. "You are pathetic," he muttered, before he turned and stormed off. Macy scoffed and followed him. Zara let out a long, slow breath. A few of the students clapped. Others just gave her a quiet and very respectful nod of an approval. But she didn't need their validation. She had already won. The next morning, Principal Dean stood in front of a packed auditorium. He adjusted the microphone. "Good morning, everyone," he said. "I won't take much of your time. But there is something that needs to be addressed." The murmurs spread through the crowd. Yesterday, the principal continued, his own expression now firm and very serious. Mr. Grayson was suspended after the evidence had confirmed a long and very disturbing pattern of discrimination and a bias in his classroom. Gasps rippled through the room. "But this," he said, "is bigger than just one teacher. It is about the culture that we allow to exist in our schools. And let me be clear, Lincoln High School will never, ever be a place where our students are judged by anything other than their own very real abilities." Zara was sitting near the front, her own heart pounding in her chest. The principal then turned toward her. "Miss Thompson," he said, "please, stand up." She hesitated, and then she slowly rose to her feet. And the principal smiled. "I want every single student in this room to know," he said, "that Zara didn't just fight for herself. She fought for fairness. She fought for respect. Because of her quiet and very profound courage, a real and very lasting change is happening in this school." And then the applause erupted. Zara's eyes stung with a new and very different kind of a tear, but she blinked them back. And for her excellence, for her resilience, and for her leadership. The principal continued, "I am so proud to announce that she has just received a full academic scholarship to any university of her choice." The cheers this time shook the entire auditorium. The students stood up. Some of them whistled. Even a few of the teachers were wiping their eyes. And Zara, she just covered her mouth completely and utterly overwhelmed. The principal smiled, a warm and very genuine smile. "Congratulations, Miss Thompson," he said. "You have earned this." And she looked around then at the new and very different and very hopeful faces of the students, and she took it all in. The support, the justice, and the undeniable and very beautiful truth. Mr. Grayson had tried to tear her down. And instead, he had just built her up, higher than she had ever, in her wildest and most ambitious dreams ever imagined. If you believe in standing up for what's right, hit that subscribe button. And remember, never let anyone tell you what you're worth.